Video 2. Oh, alright, so the consulate. So in 1799, Napoleon staged a coup d'etat.
Wait, did we talk about Napoleon, or do we need to write anything?
No, we haven't gone into detail. At this point, all you need to know is he's a general in the French army. He's rose to the ranks, and he's a very young general in the army. That's all you need to know right now. So in 1799, Napoleon stages a coup d'etat and helps to abolish the Directory. So this was actually done with people within the government who wanted to basically bring him in as kind of like this, because he was a hero, like he was a very famous national figure at this point, and they wanted to kind of build a government around him, but have him kind of be like a figurehead and people behind the scenes run the government. But whenever he's given his power, he basically takes it for himself. So he replaces the ineffective Directory with a more effective dictatorship called the consulate. So the consulate lasts about 5 years. It's technically 3 guys, kind of like old Roman style. So he basically creates a triumvirate, like the Roman Empire had initially, where he is the main leader of the triumvirate, or the consulate as he calls it. So these 3 guys are the consuls of France, the 3 leaders of France. He being the first consul. They're the chief magistrates or the chief leaders of France. So these 3 guys are going to lead France, when in reality it's really just Napoleon. So it lasts for just 5 years, from 99 until 1804, whenever he decides to crown himself emperor. But you see here on this map, like all the different places they're conquering, taking over. So it gives you kind of a good idea about where they're expanding to. All these areas in orange, so like modern day Belgium, and then parts of like Germany and like parts of modern day France, these will all become part of France now. They'll be annexed. Like all those areas in orange become annexed. Areas in yellow are occupied by France, and then these other areas are areas that are like not controlled by France directly, but basically set up to be controlled. Like basically they put the governments in charge of those areas, like mostly the Italy area. So all these areas are like where Napoleon's been fighting this whole time, expanding France's influence and control inside of Europe.
So when he became emperor, was there backlash since it was like a month?
No, in fact, he held an election, a plebiscite, and then everybody voted for him. So everybody approved it. So basically, they saw how ineffective democracy and republicanism was. So they're like, let's abandon that crap and go to like a very effective leader, right? One good dictator, right? All right, so the revolution outside of France. So we're shifting gears outside of France, looking at the impact of the revolution in other places. So Napoleon's coup ended the era of the French Revolution. So if you want to kind of, like, basically the French Revolution government ended in 99 when Napoleon takes over, because that ends any kind of republicanism in general. But its impact is going to have long-lasting effects in Europe and other places. So like Haiti is one of those locations. Haiti is going to be influenced obviously by France, but also by the American Revolution too. So both revolutions are going to have an impact on places like Haiti and Latin America too. Because not long after Haiti revolts, so does many other colonies in Latin America not long after. Under Napoleon's leadership, France dominated European continent and spread its revolutionary ideals. But sometimes this resulted in France's own colonies fighting against it. And that would be Haiti, which was not called Haiti then, called Saint-Domingue. So let's talk about Haitian independence movement. So in the 1790s, France is going to inspire rebellions in other parts of the world before Napoleon. People felt inspired by the power of these egalitarian ideals. So people were inspired by this power, this idea of egalitarian ideals. So like Haiti's going to revolt because France is vulnerable. Haiti was a colony of France. But what can France do about that right now if they revolt? Not a whole lot, because they're too busy fighting with themselves and with the people around them, right? So they can't pay much attention to their colonies right now. So Like I said, there's the island that you see here. Hispaniola is the name of the island. Haiti is the western portion. At that time, it was called Saint Domingue. This is now Dominican Republic over here. But this is where Haiti is currently in back then, the western portion of this island, Saint Domingue at that time. And the guy who's going to end up leading the revolution in Haiti is going to be Toussaint Louverture. So Toussaint Louverture, this guy right here, was born a slave in Saint Domingue. His master taught him how to read. So he was born a slave in Saint Domingue. His master taught him how to read. And he eventually freed him in the 1770s. So he becomes a freedman in the 1770s. And so this guy was educated, and he had the qualities of a good leader. He was intelligent and literate, could speak several languages. So he was intelligent, literate, could speak several languages. He also becomes a very skilled military commander and diplomat. So whenever the slave revolt happens, it's not like you just have this guy who's just like a random slave who leads a revolt. You have a guy who's going to be very educated and intellectual who will be able to lead this revolt here in Haiti. He'll also be inspired by the Enlightenment as well as the French Revolution, because that's their home country. Or their mother country, I should say, not home country. Mother country. Also understand there's kind of two different events that take place here. In the early 90s, you have a slave revolt that overthrows like the island's power. Then later, you're going to have a second revolt that's going to fight for independence. So it's kind of two different things that are happening here. So we're going to first look at the slave revolt. Saint Domingue was perhaps the world's most lucrative colony. Growing what there? Sugar. So Saint Domingue was perhaps the world's most lucrative colony producing sugar. Like I said, whenever France lost Louisiana and other territory had in North America, it was a loss, but it was not as bad because they still had all these very profitable sugar islands. Like here. So it made the owners of the plantations there very wealthy. But 89% of its inhabitants were enslaved Africans. So 89% of the Saint Domingue inhabitants were enslaved Africans who led horrible lives. And like we talked about in the last unit, they would be worked to death because a lot of times the owners believed that it would be cheaper to basically work them until they died versus trying to take care of them and just replace them with new slaves. Yeah.
Was the consulate the sixth government change?
Yeah, but at that point, it's not really the revolution anymore. Now it's just Napoleon. Honestly, at that point, it's a new government. Yes, it would be the next one, but it's more or less turned into dictatorship now. It's not really French Revolution anymore. Anyway, so in 1791, a slave rebellion swept the colony. Although Toussaint was already a free man, he did share the same rage that slaves had had and took command of the revolt. So he didn't start the revolt. It started on the plantations themselves. And so when it began to break out in Saint Domingue, Toussaint became the leader of it because he felt the same rage they did. But he did not initiate it. So at first, he shipped his wife, sons, and former master off the island for safety. So before the fighting started for him, he shipped off his wife, sons, and former master off the island for safety. He then began to train the slaves in guerrilla warfare. Meaning what? Hit and run tactics, right? You're not out there marching in formation. Basically, you go out, you attack, and you get out. You attack and get out. Cause a lot of disruptions. So he trained troops in guerrilla warfare that made him successful. So basically, the slave revolt is against the French masters on the island. And this chaos and opportunity, or I should say, in this chaos an opportunity presents itself. And so simultaneously, Britain and Spain try to invade the island to take over the French portion. So simultaneously, Spain and Britain try to take over that portion of the island because of how lucrative it was. To basically, because France was so distracted with fighting the wars it had in France it wouldn't be able to do much about it. So when these guys show up, the slaves initially take Spain's side, fighting against Britain. So initially, the slaves will join Spain's side in the fight against the British invasion. But then the French Revolution government throws a wrench in all this. So they couldn't do much about this. They couldn't get to them to resolve this conflict. So they did something very bold. In 1794, the National Convention, which was in charge at that time, the National Convention declared their slaves free. So the convention declared all their slaves free as a direct result. Which, there you go, that's a little bit of the revolution ideals there, right? Equality and fraternity. And so when that happened, Toussaint Louverture and the slaves returned to the French side. So now they basically jump ship, rejoin the forces of France, and now we're going to fight to force off the British and the Spanish. So Louverture and the slaves will eventually push out the French push out the Spanish and the British, and return Saint-Domingue to French control. As a reward for his help and to basically appease the inhabitants, all the African inhabitants of the island, Saint-Domingue made him lieutenant governor of the colony. So Toussaint Louverture becomes the lieutenant governor of the colony as a result. And he becomes a very popular figure who advocates for reconciliation between the races. He becomes a very popular figure in Saint-Domingue for advocating for reconciliation between the races. He did force people to work. But they were okay with it because now they're getting what? Now they're getting money, right? So he basically has all these guys go back to work after the revolt takes place, but they're okay with that for the most part because now they're sharing the plantation profits. And this actually encouraged a lot of the exiled plantation owners to come back. So a lot of the people who had left came back once the revolution kind of ended there. But over time, Louverture wanted to have his people run the island, and so over time, he eventually pushes his rivals away, and he appoints himself the military governor of the island. So eventually, he deems himself the military governor of the island and removes any of these French colonial leaders and makes himself the leader of the island. He also renames Saint-Domingue into what? Haiti. So he also renames it to Haiti. So basically in the late 90s, early 1800s, he's the sole leader of Haiti. And he'll make some changes. He'll sign some trade treaties with Great Britain. Now keep in mind, Haiti is not what though? They're not British, but they're also not independent. They're still a colony. He just made himself the leader of the colony. So he's fine with operating within France. So he signed trade treaties with Britain, which made France very upset. Because he's very pragmatic. He wants to, look out for the best interests of Haiti. He then invades the Spanish portion of the island and frees all the slaves there. So he then goes to the Spanish portion of the island and frees all the slaves there as well, too. So when Napoleon takes over in early 1800s, or the 1800s, he didn't trust Louverture and decided to plot against him. So basically, Napoleon wanted to reestablish control over Haiti and reestablish a slave colony there. That way, it could be a staging ground to go reestablish themselves in North America. That's why Napoleon does what in 1800 in North America? He buys back Louisiana, right? So Napoleon buys back Louisiana in 1800 from Spanish because his plan was to basically go into Haiti, reestablish a slave colony there with making a lot of money off the sugar plantations, used that money to fund conquering in North America. That was before Napoleon realized he was going to be too tied up conquering Europe and over there in general. So anyway, he decides to send some troops over to Haiti in 1802. He then tricked and arrested Toussaint Louverture, had Toussaint Louverture brought to a French prison where he died the next year in 1803. So Toussaint Louverture was captured and in prison where he died in France in 1803, or a year later. When Toussaint Louverture was eventually killed in the prison or died in prison, a lot of his supporters feared there would be a re-enslavement or some kind of thing would take place to like try to come in here and like force these guys back into slavery. So what they did was that that's when the independence fight happened. So in 1804 is when the Haitians will revolt without Louverture, because Louverture is now dead. They'll revolt against the French army. Napoleon can't subdue them, so he's going to lose control of Haiti. So in 1804, Haiti is established as independent. So Toussaint Louverture's death essentially inspires them to fight for independence from France, which they'll win. And that's one of the reasons why Napoleon decides to do what with Louisiana? Sell to Jefferson, because he realizes what? He doesn't have a staging ground or the money now to basically do this reconquest of North America. So that's how we end up getting Louisiana here in America as well, too. So Haiti's independent in 1804. But what you want to understand is that it's influenced by several things. American Revolution, French Revolution, as well as the various documents, the Enlightenment. All these things influence Haiti just like the French Revolution was too. And what we're not really going to go into much because the key concepts don't want you to go through all this, but several of the Latin American colonies began to go independent from 1800 until 1830 for the same reasons, because they're inspired by these groups who do the same thing, all these different revolutions, and showing they can be successful, right? All right.
Time to go.
Couple minutes, about a minute or so. We'll stop there.